I am your host, Tiffany. So glad to be back again with you all, and so glad to be in this new series, which is the Love and Relationship series. And we're starting out with leadership and relationships. So glad to have our special guest on, Patrick D. Shaffer. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, how are you?
I am well. I'm glad to have you on. This is a fellow podcaster, everyone. He is the host of the Love Again podcast. He is a leader of leaders. And so I'm so glad to have you on this season. Also, he is the founder of Urban Advantage, and you can tell us more about that if you want to. A life
hmm
coaching and mentoring center for young people, and he is the senior leader and pastor of City of Faith Church. So, welcome, 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 Patrick.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Love the work that you're doing. Admire what you're doing on your podcast is great. And got a got a love expert on the show today, y'all. So
No, 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 no.
let's
That's not me, but
So let's see what we're gonna get out of this. We want to jump right into this. Like I said, Patrick is a leader over many things, and you can expand on that if you want to. But let's just start by getting a working definition of what the dynamics of leadership are to you, or what you think leadership means.
um, I get a lot of my ideas about leadership, my philosophy of leadership. Um, I pull from a lot of different sources, but I think one is Dr. King. This idea that um, to be a leader is to be a servant, right? And it is a specific role, but it is not greater, it is not lesser, it is just specific. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that um, as a leader, your goal is to serve the people um, up under your leadership and to serve the vision and
Mm.
the aim of the journey that you take with people. And so Dr. King and then Jesus, of course, right?
Of
I think he
course.
models for us um, uh, liberation style of leadership that ultimately leadership brings people into freedom,
Mm-hmm.
into being their most authentic self and kind of removing barriers between them and God and or them and their goals or them and even their perceptions about themselves that might not be true. So I kind of marry those two ideas, philosophies together for
Love
myself.
it. Love it. Love it. Sounds great. So I've been talking this season about leadership, just diving into that different styles of leadership. And we had a show maybe the other week, a couple shows ago, where we were talking about different styles of leadership and how a lot of people gravitated to that. Because if I felt that sometimes we could put leadership in a box, and we have this idea of what leadership is, and if people or a person doesn't fit, or their personality type doesn't fit in what you think your idea of as a leader is, you automatically assume they're not a leader. So I always say they're visionary leaders, they're support leaders, they're team leaders, they're operational leaders, they're different type of leaders. And sometimes when you're misplaced, you cannot shine your best. So let me know what you think about different styles of leadership and how they translate into relationships.
I think that leadership, like most things in life, can be improvisational.
Mm-hmm.
You can be prepared, and I think that it's it's our responsibility to be as prepared. And when I say prepared, I mean to be the best version of ourselves, to refine and know our own gifts and our own talents. And yet, on the journey towards the goal, there are things that happen that are not in your control that you have to make adjustments for.
Mm-hmm.
It is a leadership and moving towards goals can be a human environment, and so people have issues that sometimes you have to adjust to,
Mm-hmm.
because we are all human and we are all playing a role towards our goal, and you have to adjust to personalities. You have to adjust to what's going on in someone else's life, and so I think a great attribute of a leader is their ability to be improvisational, to be fluid in how they lead, to
Mm-hmm.
know when to push, to know when to pull, to know when to pull back. Um, I think all of those things matter. And I think even in our relationships, I think it's important that you can have a goal in your relationships, and yet you may have to adjust at different times
That's a
to how
good
you
point.
get there, because you have a partner, right?
Right.
Who has their own needs, who has their own skill sets, and being able to partner with somebody emotionally and spiritually and otherwise in order to kind of move between point A and point B. I think it's all fluid. And if you don't have that capacity to make those adjustments and to be fluid and to be improvisational, I think you can fail um, in leadership. I also think that, and maybe perhaps I push against gender roles in so
Mm,
much that um, if I am a man and you are a woman, then we presuppose what role we need to play. And
mm,
I presuppose what my action is supposed to be in this
mm.
relationship instead of saying, well, you know, I, I can cook. So does that make me less of is that a woman's role? Or like if it's a woman's role and you can't cook, so I'm just gonna let you cook and kill both of us because that's what women do, right? Well, no, we're not gonna do that. So if that's what I can do, then let me do that. And whatever you might be good at doing something that traditionally maybe men
Right,
have done.
right.
But this is our relationship, this is between me and you. And so let's find out, what works best for us. And so I think, love is collaborative and it is improvisational, and I think it is created between two people instead of kind of like you said, presupposing my leadership style or what I think you should be and what you should do and trying to fit somebody within that box. I don't know if that's going to be horribly successful or not. I'm not sure.
Well, I love everything you just said. You said a mouthful, but it's interesting because these points or how Patrick feels about this, haven't known before, but it's interesting. So I want to kind of go back to a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
And one is that I can remember off the top of my head right now is the presupposition of gender roles, which I'm going to be transparent on the podcast and say I am kind of one of those people who um, sometimes can fall into that category
Mm-hmm.
of what I think certain gender roles should be. Now, I agree with the cooking thing. I don't think cooking is a woman's thing. I think if a man could cook, I think a man should cook. If you don't know how to cook, you should try to cook. Try. I'm gonna try it. I just want to see you put in the effort and
Mm-hmm.
cook. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not one of those things, but I do have a. I won't say. Um, yeah, I guess I will say gender role because I do think there are certain roles that men hold, and I do think there are certain roles that women hold. I don't think that it should affect their leadership style. I think a man can be any leadership style. I think a woman can be any leadership style. I just think it's how they, what you said, create and collaborate when they come together
Right.
as a union of what works for them. But I think that's also with knowing who you are, being honest with who you are, and then being honest with what you need to complement or be suitable for you.
Mm-hmm.
I try to go beyond just complimenting. I think suitable is more of the word I like to use just because it's like a left and right hand. They not only
Mm-hmm.
complement each other the way that they, when they're face to face, come together, it's suitable. A left hand and a right hand is suitable. for each other, or when a man and a woman face to face, body parts are
Mhm.
made suitable for each
Mhm.
other. But so with that being said, if you have people who are, have certain gender roles that they hold, and then you have the leadership styles on top of that. Oh, this is what I wanted to go back to. You were saying basically that leadership styles should change seasonally, dependent on who you are dealing with. This is something I said too, like a couple of weeks ago. I think that we all have been given the grace to rise to whatever occasion we're assigned to. So you may have a way that you naturally deal with things, but if you're dealing with certain people, particularly if you're a leader, I think we have to use wisdom too in how to lead the people we're leading, because your natural leadership style may not work for that group of people or that person. And I feel like it's like that in relationships, but it can be sticky, because how do we show up as ourselves and how a person needs us without being phony or remaining authentically ourselves? So that's a question I have for you, and I'll come back to that. But I guess let's get back to the gender role thing.
Yeah, no,
I'm
so
like I'm like a concert, like a I don't know, kind of
mhm.
conservative type of person with
Well,
no, I got
yeah, I
issues,
get it.
but you know,
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. Um, I don't know how useful they are, because if we go into it saying, well, this is what a man is supposed to do, I could come into and say, well, this is what a woman's supposed to do.
yeah,
Um, and that may not always the motive behind that then is duty.
mm-hmm.
I don't because I am a man, and because my skeleton and muscles are the way they are, I don't expect you as a woman to change a tire. I don't expect you to lift heavy things, because of course you can't. Like I am built, my anatomy is built to do those things. But I don't do those things for you because I am a man. I do it because I love you
Right,
and I care about you,
mm-hmm.
right? That's not a gender role. That gender roles are the societal construct. If I do these things because I can do these things, it has to be because I love and care for you, and I don't want you to hurt yourself. And so to me, if it's just gender roles, then if I don't feel like playing this role for you, then that might affect whether or not I'm going to do it or not.
Right,
If I do it because I remember, oh, I love and care about this person, then if that's in the forefront, then I'm going to do it whether I feel like it or not, because that's the way love obligates us sometimes, right? And so for me, um, I don't know if I like this idea of you pointing a finger and saying, but this is what you're supposed to do. Because then we could both point fingers at each other and say, well, this is what you're supposed to do. And we could do that all day. So let's not do that. Let's remember that we love each other, and let what we do and how we serve one another be because only because we love one another, not because this is what some book says, this is what men are supposed to do and what women are supposed to do.
well, what about when people come with these? I mean, because we can say that, but then everyone comes to relationships with preconceived notions or their experiences or what they need. So here you go with like gender roles. And so some could be societal. I believe mine are based off the Bible, but you know me, I got a little sprinkle, hey,
Mm-hmm.
and I like this too. So I'm gonna throw this
Mm-hmm.
in there too. So what if it's not anything where you're coming in and you're saying, hey, you need to do this, you should do this, because what I absolutely despise is and this is where I think authenticity comes in, and people have to really know who they are and say who they are. I don't want to tell you what I think you should be doing, but I would like for you to communicate to me what you think you should be doing and what you bring to the table. And I can communicate that same thing, and we can see if it's compatible. If, our two ideologies, the way we think, what we want, our goals, how we can serve. I love what you said. Love is serving each other. And the way that I am built, wired, or choose, because love is a decision too. We can't just show up any type of way and say, this is me and this is it, and I'm never changing. So even the decisions we make, how I choose to serve you and how you choose to serve me, are we in some type of alignment with what that means? And where do we get these ideologies from? I believe mine come from the Bible. So if someone comes up to me with a gender role that comes from society and I don't think it's necessarily biblical, I'm already not going to serve you in that area. I already know I'm not. So I can be honest, about that. But
Right.
I can say, even if I struggle or have I'm not naturally good at something, if I believe it comes, it's maybe in the word and, it comes from my core value systems, I can adjust. I can make a decision to adjust.
Yeah,
So
I get it.
is it necessarily duty, or is it coming to the table saying, like, this is what I want, this is who I am, this is what I desire, and are we two people who can bring that to each other? And I think this is especially important for leaders, because leaders are just used to leading the way that they lead, and you have to know who's who and what's what in a relationship.
Okay. Uh,
I know
that's
it's a
a
lot.
that's a lot.
It's
Yeah,
a lot.
that's
It's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot.
Well, you gave
I
me a
am
lot, so I'm gonna give you a lot back.
yeah. I'm not going to wholly disagree with you. I'm just going to push back a little bit
Push back.
because if we look at if we're going to use the Bible as
Uh-oh.
as the base of of our understanding about what roles we play for each other, it's going to be problematic in that in the Bible, women had no agency. Women were not partners; they were just utilities, um,
Mm,
domestic utilities, and to perpetuate, the bloodline. Like they had no voice, they had no agency, and it wasn't. And this is why I love Jesus in that he was a great emancipator and liberator of women. That we always see Jesus standing between the society that wanted to oppress them, and he stands in between them and the woman and begins to liberate her. And here's the problem with liberation: to be free means that you have to construct from the and design it from the very beginning, right? And I wrote a book a long time ago. It was called Love Again, and one of the chapters in the book was called Making Love. I think it was that. And this idea is that when when I got my first apartment, I went to look at different apartments, and I came back one day really really down to my mother, and I was like, "Mom, I went to this apartment, and it didn't have any furniture in it, and wasn't no pots and pans in the kitchen and nothing." I was like, I can't move in that place." She was like, "Idiot. Um, Apartments don't come fully furnished.
mhm.
Whatever you want to have in it, you have to put in it yourself." And I think that is the a great idea about love, that our love does not come as furnished as we want to be, but we can collaborate to decorate and to put in it our space what we want it to be. In order to do that, we may need to lose or do away with roles that don't work for you, that don't work for me. And I know what our grandmama told us, and I know what role they played, and what my grandfather did, and all the like. That might not work for us. And so I think what you want is a partner to say, okay, we're going to get really creative about how we love each other and how we manifest that love, and talk to me about how do you feel love, and what does care look like for you, and then let me tell you what that looks like for me, and tell you what I can do for myself, and what I want you to partner with me to do. Like, I think those are the kind of conversations that I think a healthy love has, in order And that's different from the Bible says, you a man and you a woman, and this is your duty.
Mhm.
Because as long as people been looking at the Bible for those things, I don't know if it's worked out that way all the time. Like I, I don't know. And so I think using the Bible to help us find language about our love and to give us ideas about the trajectory of the aim of our love, I think it's great. I think using the Bible as a guide for the roles of a man and woman in relationships can be problematic alone.
Agree. I agree. I'll give a little pushback and then I'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in certain parts of the word that um it seems, women were just there to procreate. But as you said, Jesus is the great emancipator. And I think the New Testament is full of examples of, husbands, deal with your wives with knowledge, meaning that there is a certain level of wisdom that once a man connects with a woman that he should operate in when dealing with the person that he's building a life with. And I think that's wonderful wisdom. And I think that, not that a woman shouldn't have that either, but I believe that it is particularly said to the man, just as, we're commanded to love our husbands. Men are commanded, to respect our husbands. Men are commanded to love, because God inherently knows in the heart how he wired the male and the female and what they need to be poured into. So I think that is definitely the great place for, foundation. I think the New Testament is filled with just even practical examples of Jesus' life on how to not only just treat people in relationship with romantically, but how to treat people in relationship, period. But I think that it does go a step further in the New Testament about how to treat like in romantic relationships. So you said something about gender roles, and I want to say this because I did um, have a question from someone that they don't even know about they know about the show now, but was asked about leadership in the home. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think this goes to gender role because they were asked about the husband making decisions and being the leader of the home. I I teach everyone has some type of leadership in them. Like we're all called to some type of leadership, whether it's whether you're a parent, if you're a parent, God has made you a leader with your children. If you have a job, whatever that may be. And so going back to like leadership in the home, do you think that it is solely uh, a man's responsibility as a leader in the home to make the final decision on matters? I don't know if you want to answer
Uh,
that one, Patrick.
no, so here's, I don't know if I have a clear answer on that. Here's what I will say. Here's what I will say. Um, I remember a long time ago, um, I was traveling with my pastor. That was my job. I traveled with him, and we were, I think we were finished in one city, and he had to make a decision whether he wanted to go to one city or another city. He had an obligation to go here, or to go there, or to go home, or something like that. And we were sitting there, him and I was just trying to figure it out, and da 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 da. And he ups and says, "You know what? Hold on, let me call my conscience." And he called his wife and talked it through with her, and then we did what she thought was best, which was the right decision. And I just always remembered how he described her as his
Mm,
conscience,
mm.
right? That
I
you
like that.
have another intellectual resource that when
Right.
you can't figure something out, you got another brain that's working that can kind of see it from a different angle that you don't have, and open your eyes. And his ability to hear what she wanted to hear, her opinion, and say, okay, we're going to go with her opinion because it's best.
Mhm.
Yes. So I don't, the final decision, a man makes a final decision. I don't know. That just doesn't work for me. Because if I got to make, I'm making all the final decisions now. Like I gotta, I'm making the final decisions for me. I would want a partner that can, carry this,
Yeah,
carry this load. I got to make decisions for you and me too. And like it's a lot of pressure. And
I
then,
like that.
whether or not you could say, well, he has the final decision, and then if you say because that's the role he played ahead, then he does makes a dumb decision, then are you dumb for letting him make the decision?
I ain't gonna be able to do
Or right, right. So,
it.
if we're going to be in this and we're all going to be 100% in this, then I don't make you're my partner. I don't make any decisions that will affect the trajectory of our life or our stability and all those things solely alone. We are in this together. So if it goes up, we got skin in the game. If it goes down, we got skin in the game.
Okay.
And I don't get, for me, and this is personally, I think that leadership in the home, especially for men, is not telling everybody what to do all the time.
Right. Right.
Like it's not. Leadership is more than, and headship is more than that. Um, and so I don't know if it's a lot of pressure. That's why a lot of men die early. Like no, they play these
What?
roles. He's supposed to be the head, make all the decisions. She don't work. These are traditional roles. He works two or three jobs and running from here and there, and then he works himself to death and stresses himself out, and he dies of hypertension, bad heart, diabetes, because leadership is a burden, right? And if you as a man, you're carrying all of that by yourself, and everything falls on you. That there's no way to live that kind of existence and it doesn't tax you
Right.
mentally, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, and all the like. And then you dead, and then she off with the insurance money with her sisters in Vegas somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
Really?
just saying, like,
Really?
it has happened before. It has happened once or twice before. That's all I'm saying. So I just think I think it's again it has to be a collaborative space.
Well,
We
I
do
agree.
this
I actually
together.
like the example that you gave because it is, it's a decision where someone had to, it's a situation where someone had to make a decision. And I like we said, when there's another intellect that's part of the partnership too. And I think that's leadership. And it's one of the things I always play up. I mean, is your decision to make, whether like you're at work, you're in ministry, you're in a relationship, it's your decision to make. But do you want to make this decision without another perspective, without another person's input? And so what you said just describes like even a business relationship. When you have a CEO, they're not the CFO. They still bring in another executive leader who is who they are in their own rights. They're a leader, but you're not going to make all these financial decisions without the CFO of the company. I don't care if you are the CEO, you're going to get input. If you want a successful business, you're going to get input. And I do think that is the same with relationships. I think that everyone has to respect the strengths of the other person. And sometimes I think that can go awry, especially when people are looking at gender roles. If you can't handle money, I don't care if you are the man, you're not about to squander like my money. You need to know the strength of the person who you are dealing with. Know those who labor among you, who has the most sense in some areas. I mean, some areas people just operating in the sense, God gave you, but sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. It's just not your strong suit. So I do like that though. I think that's a very good way to, talk about how leaders operate in relationships. And so, but before we get out of here, I do have one last question I want to ask you. And that
Mhm.
is, we're talking about leaders, and I know I talk about support leaders all the time and visionary leaders and just being in leadership. What are your thoughts on leading with love? That's what I've been seeing lacking a lot in leadership. Sometimes people think leadership is coming down on people with the iron hammer, making all the decisions. being a loudmouth, being opinionated, and none of that makes you a leader. And so, whatever your leadership role is, though, I think that we need to lead with love. And what does that look like to you, especially in relationships? How do people lead with love in whatever area you're leading in?
Yeah, I've been interested in observing over the last few years leadership from what's going on in our politics, from what's going on in our churches, and even in our interpersonal relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
this whole idea of, it gets tossed around, toxic masculinity, right? Um, and to be a leader and for me to be a man, I need to be a bully. I need to, be ruthless. I need to be driven by my appetites and my goals, and everybody who follow me, you're just on for this ride.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I reject that idea. Is it the only way to lead, or it's kind of like, well, the only way to parent is to make your children afraid of you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the only way for you to control the woman in your life is by threats,
Mm-hmm.
economic threats or physical threats or whatever. And I think there has to be a space for men to be gentlemen,
I agree.
right? And that we lead with our emotional presence
Mm-hmm.
and affirmation. And it doesn't mean that we can't be firm and be
Mm-hmm.
direct, but anybody you have to to make them stay with you, you have to make them insecure. That's not love, right? And I am a firm believer, and I believe this with all my heart, that ultimately love liberates. Michael said
Mm-hmm.
this long time ago, and we missed it. Michael said love is not possession, right? Because just because I love you doesn't mean I own you and can control you. Love means that I've made a decision to be vulnerable in a space where you can walk away from me or change your mind about me or decide that, something different about yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that still means that I don't own you, that if you decide to leave, then I love you enough to let you go. Because if I have to threaten you to stay, so you're not staying because you love me. You're staying because, I've made you afraid to leave me. And I think that there should be more conversations about how we love the women and the children in our lives in a way that is and can be leading and not threatening at the same time. And
Well, I love what you
to
said
raise your
about I love what you said about leading with love looks like being emotionally present. And
Mhm.
so talk about that because I want to talk about what does it look like. Sometimes, you can have a person who says, I want to lead with love, but what does that look like? All I know is what I've seen or what I've done. And so what does it look like to be emotionally present for someone?
I think that we have to do intentional work in order to be emotionally present in our relationships, because vulnerability and uncertainty always makes us hide, right? It always
Mm-hmm.
makes us scared. Let's go back to your Bible. When
My
when
Bible.
Adam and Eve.
Don't
No,
get don't get the don't
I'm
get the
with you.
plan on this
No,
podcast.
no.
Don't get the plan on this.
Let me go back to your
I'm just
Bible.
saying.
When if Adam and Eve are in a relationship with God and they break trust in the relationship, what do they immediately do? They go hide because they're
Hmm.
afraid, right?
Hmm.
And so, how do we learn not to hide? How do we
Mm.
learn to, if we break trust or if we're not everything that we feel like we should be or the other person feels like we should be, how do I not hide from that and be vulnerable enough to say, you know what? yeah, I may have failed you. I may have messed up, and I'm sorry. Let me fix that. I think that there
Yeah.
has to be, um, you have to sublimate, you have to subjugate your ego,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, I think we hide behind our egos and our pride so much that we miss opportunities to really emotionally connect.
That is so
we
true.
we 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 don't know how to say to the woman in our lives, when you did that, it made me extremely insecure
Mm,
because maybe I have abandonment issues that I haven't talked to you about, but your
right.
language and your body language and the way you interact with me makes me afraid. And when that happens, I kind of retreat, and I don't want to retreat. And so I need you to know this. So when you do it, we can
That's an
find a way to stay in the
awareness.
room.
But
Yeah, it takes
that's
work
an
to do that.
awareness, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
communication. Like it's a
Absolutely.
you cannot shut down because if something has happened, if a woman has done something, or a man, doesn't matter, woman or a man has done something, and it affects you, but it wouldn't necessarily have affected that person in the same way. So they don't even see it like that.
But
They
that's a
have
human impulse, right? If you have a child, you hear something crash in the living room, and you come in and the lamp is on the floor, and you say, "Did you knock over the lamp?" What is the child gonna do? And say, "No." The reason the child lies is because he doesn't want you to be mad. He
yeah,
doesn't want you to be angry, right? And so, if we could push past, like, okay, well, you may be upset, you may be angry, but
yeah.
this is, I'm gonna stay in the room,
Or you
and
may be upset, you may be angry, or push past not wanting to be vulnerable. I
sure,
think that is the
absolutely.
biggest thing in this society. Like everything is a guard, everything is I don't care, everything is I'm hard. What I mean,
And
I
we
think
both have a relationship. We both have a responsibility to create an atmosphere where it's
that's true.
okay not to hide. Like, it's
That's
okay
true.
to be vulnerable. It's okay to be naked and exposed in front of me. I'm on your side. I'm not
Right.
going to use it against you. I'm not going to weaponize your fears or your insecurities. You're safe with me. And the reason we don't do that is because ultimately, if we don't feel safe in the world, so
Hmm.
it may have nothing to
Yeah.
do with this relationship. We just bring our habits
Yeah.
into our relationships, and we have to learn how to undo those things in ourselves. So it's work, like you
Well,
said.
it's
It's a
work.
lot of work.
It's
Yeah,
work, but
yeah.
I like what you brought to the forefront, and I think it's like you said, it's worth. These are the discussions and the conversations that we need to be having, and so hopefully we'll be unfolding more information and topics in this series. And I think one of the things that I would, just end with leading with love is I always say just lead from really what's in your heart from not a reactive standpoint. And so sometimes you can really have something in your heart for someone, but the way they act, something that they did, and you just touched on this perfectly, Patrick, instead of saying, you know what, I don't want to shut down who I am. I don't want to be guarded. I don't want to hold back any of myself with this person. So I'm going to let them know, hey, I was kind of giving you all of me, and I felt insecure when you did this and you did that, instead of shutting down. And now it's a reactionary um, response that someone is
Mhm.
getting out of you, and that's I I don't like that, and and I have to guard myself against that too, because I always think I want to lead with purity, with what's really in my heart, what's really my mission and my purpose for why ever I'm here, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a job. But I don't want to get wounded and then I start leading from reaction. So you wounded me, and so I'm gonna put a guard up, and then I'm gonna wound you, just to make sure that we're either on even playing ground or you don't wound me anymore. So that's the way I think to lead with love. It's just from a pure heart and not being reactionary.
Amen.
So, amen. Amen. Well, once again, we've had a great show. I am so happy you finally got on, Patrick. I'll
Yeah,
have
thank
his
you for inviting me.
information posted. He does have a podcast. I believe it airs on Saturdays. And so you can check
Mhm.
that out if you want to. Tip Tuesday family, we will be back again with another installment of this relationship and love series. So we'll see you then. Until next time, peace, love, and blessings to the tribe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.